This is the Soft Power Podcast, episode 29. Hello, Soft Power Society. If you feel it's high time that you started feeling socially and conversationally confident, leave all your self-doubt behind, and come across as a polished professional, I invite you to join me for a very special Small Talk Masterclass taking place Thursday, November 19th. In this masterclass, you'll develop the skill of being fast on your feet and saying the right thing, be more comfortable speaking in one-on-one conversations, and even learn to speak fluidly and extemporaneously in videos. You'll be much better initiating conversations and reduce the nerves, anxiety, and any challenges you have to engaging in chit-chat. I'm really so excited for this. It's going to be for a small group, so everyone will get individual attention, and there will be plenty of opportunity to practice in a supportive environment of peers who share your social challenges and concerns. The big bonus is all attendees will also have the opportunity to schedule a one-on-one coaching session after the masterclass. So if you've had it in the back of your mind to one day conquer this skill, well, your time has finally come. Don't wait until the last minute to register because it will sell out. So go to businessclass.expert/small talk hero to register, and I'll also have a link in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you there and afterward hearing how you started to rock every room you enter. Now, on to today's show. Hi and welcome. I'm Susan Callender, and I'm so glad you're here. What would you say is easier to conquer? Addressing an audience of, let's say, 200 people from the stage, face-to-face, or on a Zoom video conference? Half the battle with professional presence and communication is showing up and speaking up. And no one is exempt from feeling queasy or nervous when it's time to present or speak to an audience. If you're a subscriber to the podcast, which I hope you are, and if you follow me on Facebook or if you've seen my videos, you're likely familiar with the story about my making the big decision to leave Fenway Park, which is a baseball park in Boston, Mass, where I'm located, moments before the MC introduced me to speak to a gathering of a few hundred business owners. That was definitely a mortifying moment. But wait, if you think that's bad, I've also cried from sheer nervousness before speaking, and that was in front of people. But those days are thankfully behind me, and my guest today will make sure that you leave any nervousness associated with public speaking behind as well. Kit Pang is the CEO of Boston Speaks, and don't let the name dissuade you, as he works with an international clientele. Kit was initially attracted to public speaking after entering a competition, and he has used the momentum from that win to propel him and his great roster of clients to public speaking excellence. Kit, welcome to the Soft Power Podcast.
Susan, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this.
Wonderful. Let's start with the answer to that question I just posed. Do you think speaking to an audience requires the same amount of preparation, whether you're in person or virtual? What are your thoughts on that?
Now, Susan, I have a question for you too, and I want you to think about it as I'm answering. How much do you still prepare for presentations or important meetings? You see, when I started getting into public speaking, I used to prepare and prepare and prepare, like memorize every single word. But as I got more used to it, I started to prepare less and less. That is actually my biggest challenge. I need to start preparing more. So it really depends on where you are right now. So if you are someone that over prepares, maybe it's working on the skill of how can I be in the moment more and not prepare too much. But if you're that person that just don't prepare anymore, well, how can you prepare a little bit more now so you know your words will be more impactful? But what about you, Susan?
I tend to err on the side of preparation. I practice. I always know my main speaking points, but I suppose it depends on the audience, which is going to lead us to another great question, which is how important is it to know your audience?
Knowing your audience is, well, this is the question, right? Which came first, chicken or egg? So when
Mm.
it comes to speaking, which comes first? Should you know your audience or should you know your ideas first? What actually, Susan, what do you think?
I think you need to know your speaking points. You need to know why you're the expert or the person that's been called to the stage. Why are you the presenter? And based on that, crafting your talk to that audience. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the main question, right? Well, which one comes first? It will always piggy back and forth. Okay, here are the reasons why. Okay, let's say you're talking to your audience, and I'll use this other example. Let's say you're cooking. Okay, if your audience are vegans, would you give them a hamburger? No, that's just
No.
gonna be so silly, right? If your audience don't like spicy food, will you cook them spicy food? So here's the thing. Let's
Hmm.
say, oh, you have this big idea, I'm gonna make the best hamburger ever. But your audience, they don't eat meat. That means your ideas you can't do it anymore because it's not meant for your audience. So how can you, that's why we'll always go piggyback and forth. Well, do you know your audience? Do you know your ideas? But I will say, I many speech writers, they will absolutely want to know your audience first. They want to know what they want, what they don't want, what they believe in, what they don't believe in. And then after that, you can craft your message to helping them get to where they want to go. Because at the end of the day, your presentation or your speaking is it's meant for your audience to help them get to where they want to go.
That is such a great response, Kit. And it also causes me to think about why it is that extroverts and introverts alike can shy away from public speaking when you've made it clear that just knowing the taste of your audience is what really is going to draw them in. Why do people, from your perspective, shy away from public speaking?
Many people shy away from public speaking. I'm going to give you 4 reasons. And many of you that are listening right now, you can hit all 4 of these, or it could be just one of them. The first reason is task mastery. You probably don't have task mastery in your speaking. So, for example, if you want to learn how to ride a bicycle, no matter how many books you read about riding a bicycle or watch YouTube videos on riding a bike, you're not going to get better if you just don't get out there and ride a bicycle. It's the same thing for your speaking. If you want to get better as a speaker, this might sound like the opposite, but
Mhm.
most of us, we shy away from speaking. Well, that's shying away from riding a bicycle. We're just not getting the task mastery, okay?
Mhm.
And many people don't want to hear this, but we have to learn how to fall and fail and get back up and learn from our mistakes, right? A master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. So that means if you want to get better as you're speaking, are you seeking the opportunity? Now, here's the thing 1.5, okay? You need task mastery plus risk. If you want to be a better swimmer and you swim the same 2 laps, let's say it takes you 2 minutes, okay, to swim the same lap, and you keep on swimming that same lap for the entire year. Of course, you're used to it, but you're not getting any better, okay? You can, the next time you go and say, oh, I'm going to swim this lap in 1 minute and 30 seconds, okay? You see how you took that challenge and that
Yes.
risk? It's the same thing with the speaking. You can be comfortable speaking to, let's say, groups of 3 or 4. What's that risk that you can take? Next time, it could be, oh, I'm going to start off with telling a story. That could be the risk. Or maybe you're one of these people, you tell too many stories. Then that means you need just to get down to the point and finish as fast as possible. And that could be the risk. So the first main reason is because most people are scared because they don't have task mastery and they don't take the risk. The second big reason is high stakes. The situation that we go in, we think is high stakes for us because and my yoga teacher said this, when you're stuck in your head, you're dead. Okay, what happens when there's high stakes? We think, oh, what if I mess up? Oh, this is such a big situation.
So
It's
true.
yeah, right. But here's the thing, right, Susan? When people came up to you, maybe they're giving a talk, and they say, Susan, I'm so nervous. This is such a big thing for me. The audience will think, I'll just get it over with. You know, it's that's
In
the
fact, the
audience.
audience expects you to be an expert. They're not expecting you to mess up.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, like they don't want you to mess up. They're the root for you. So even though you think it's high stakes, uh, we have to think and check out reality. Is what I'm thinking really high stakes? Am I taking a breath, or is it on my head? One example that I use for that is if you're crossing the street and if you keep on telling yourself, I'm going to get hit every single time I'm going to cross that street, that's going to be high stakes.
Mm-hmm.
So that next high stakes situation that you go in, I need you to pause, take a look to the left and take a look to the right. Is anything actually happening? No, because nothing is actually happening. It's happening in your head, which is anticipation toward the thing that you don't want, but it's not really happening. Okay. We're
Mm-hmm.
stuck in our head. So the third reason why people get scared, and I hope you're liking this, Susan, and the people
I
that's listening.
am.
Third reason why people get scared of speaking is because of adrenaline. Well, here's the thing: we're not scared of our adrenaline. It's we don't know how to handle our adrenaline in that moment. So Olympians, they need that adrenaline to help them lift 10 times more. But when we get into an anxiety or that situation that's making us nervous, we get into that situation where we're not looking forward to it. And do you know what we stop doing? Stop breathing. When we stop breathing, we don't think clearly. And when we don't think clearly, we can't speak clearly. So when you notice you're in that state of adrenaline, you should also start noticing that you're not breathing. And the reminder to yourself is, how can I take a breath? You
Yes.
see, the symptoms of anxiety, it could be your heart rate is going faster. You can start thinking of all these things in your head. You know, your hands start sweating. Did you know the symptoms of anxiety are the same symptoms for excitement?
Absolutely. Yes, I did know that.
Yeah.
And I try to express that to my clients as well. Sometimes they think they are nervous, and I try to suggest to them to think of it in terms of excitement because they're also two different emotions in your mind.
Yeah, exactly. The only difference is, like you're saying, Susan, the people that get nervous and excited, they're looking forward to that event. That's it. They're looking forward to that event. And the final reason why people get nerves or they have that speaking anxiety, this is a fun one, is because it's in our DNA, it's in our genes. Okay, so my wife took a test. It's called 23andMe. I'm not sure if you heard of it. They give you all this DNA stuff, and they tell you what you're missing, what you're not missing in your relatives. But there was also a fun section that said, you like chocolate ice cream over vanilla ice cream, or you don't like broccoli, all this. And it also said, you are more or less likely to be afraid of public speaking. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Oh,
I took that test too.
mhm.
And so, of course, take this with a grain of salt. It's how we grew up. It's the people we surround ourselves with. There are certain clients that I worked with that have a bigger fear than others. For my test, it said, Kit, based on your genetic factors, I'm less likely to be scared of public speaking. Of course, I was scared of public speaking, but I'm just saying there are some
Mhm.
people that just takes a little bit longer to get over it, or not get over it, to ease it, because I really do believe it's built in a little bit in you. So just understanding that alone, I think, can help you as the listener clarify, oh, this is what's happening to me.
In terms of high stakes situations, and I love that because I prepare people for competitive and high stakes situations, and we're just surrounded by them right now. What are your thoughts on opening with humor? Do you suggest that if a person is not accustomed to being on stage or addressing a large group in a virtual meeting, that they use humor or shy away from it? And what's better, I'll add on to this question, Kit, humor or a story?
Many people think that when they go into a presentation, they have to be a different way. If you don't use humor in your one-on-one or normal group situations, don't use it when you get into a public speaking situation. Most speakers, let's say, maybe Oprah, Tony Robbins, someone that you've seen,
Mhm.
they're probably the same way with you one-on-one during a phone call or even on a fax machine. Their personality will come through. Okay.
Mhm.
So don't feel like, oh, I don't use any humor. I don't tell any stories in my one-on-ones or group. And then you start telling them in these presentations. you're probably not natural and used to it. So I would suggest not to. You want to practice on these small conversations first. And then when it gets natural, or you do feel like you like it, and then start sharing that in your public presentations. It's a craft. So you have to think of it like, have you ever went on Google and you've seen these examples of people failing to cook? On the left side there's an image of this, what it's supposed to look like. And then on the right side, this is how the people actually cooked. And it's a big fail.
Yes.
So storytelling, it's kind of like that. We see these great storytellers. Oh man, they tell so that story was amazing. But when I tell a story, it flops. No, it's just like cooking. It's a
Mhm.
craft that you can get better at. Okay. So you need to start practicing the craft of storytelling so you get better and better at it. The first time I made chocolate chip cookies, they weren't the best. They weren't, I think my wife said they're too salty. I'm like, oh man. You'll learn from your mistakes, but
Yes.
but don't quit. I'll say that.
How important or not important is it to have props? So if you were doing a cooking show, you would have to do, or, a cooking presentation, you would have your bowl and spoon and pots and pans. If you're on stage or even virtual on a Zoom call and you want to get your point across, do you suggest slides or props of any kind, or stick to the words, just the verbal part?
You need to, this is not one size fit all. So you need to think of yourself as a magician, even storytelling. Okay. You know how some magicians, they never do card tricks and they only do maybe, they try to escape. Okay. But they never
Sure.
do card tricks. That's the same thing with what you're saying, Susan. Do people need to tell stories? No, they did not. They never need to tell stories because you don't need to use that as your main thing. Okay, you can just learn how to escape from a box. Do you need to use visual aid? No, you don't have to. But if you want to make that your style, then keep on getting better at it.
And that's what makes you such a great public speaking trainer, Kit, because so many people get caught up on these different things that they hear. And there are so many widely held beliefs and tips that are out there that don't necessarily work for every person. If you're going to have all eyes on you, you have to use a technique that works for you, that allows you to get your point across.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really well said. It's not one size fit all.
Mm-hmm.
And, you might see stuff on Google or whoever you hear from, but know that there are many different things that we can use.
So how do you decide whether a person that you're working with should have something memorized or bulleted? And is there a best practice for either one?
Depends on how important the situation is. The more important it is, I would say memorize the heck out of it. You don't have to memorize it and look at it word for word if it's more like a meeting or something that is not as high stakes to you. So the higher the stakes, try to up your game by memorizing it. Even though you don't say it exactly when it's there, you know what's coming up and you don't have to think as much.
When I was new to public speaking, I would often use slides as prompters. And I got to the point very early on, I didn't do it for an extended period of time, but I felt like the slides were a crutch. I should know, if this is my presentation, I know what's coming next.
Yeah, it depends on everyone, but I would
Mhm.
say you also need to embrace using notes as well. Don't
Mhm.
shy away from using notes. Most people say, oh, don't use any notes. I mean, if you watch any of those late night TV shows, I
Mhm.
don't care what it is, David Letterman or whoever it
Mhm.
is. Do you know how much notes they have on the desk? They know how to use notes effectively because they can't remember everything.
Well, what if you don't have a podium and you don't have a desk like a late night host?
Do you know what the late night host will do? They'll just bring the notes with them and they'll still make it entertaining
Okay.
and fun and engaging. Okay. Because I can have notes with me right now and hold it in my hands
Mhm.
and still make it good. Really think about it. The best speakers, you're going to say, oh, they're holding notes, but oh man, they made this presentation really good.
Yeah.
We think notes look bad, therefore we're like, oh man, we're going to shy away from using notes. We're not going to hold it because we think people are going to look down on us. But no, I'm saying I have notes because I want to make sure that you all get the information and I don't forget anything important.
Excellent point, Kit. Now tell me, what are the biggest mistakes people make, whether they're first-time speakers or if they do this regularly?
Let me give you the biggest mistake that everyone makes. It's informing too much versus helping people make a decision to act on the information. But let me explain what that means. So if someone comes and picks your brain and they say, hey, Susan, can I spend 1 hour to pick your brain? And you're like, okay, yeah. And they get into a coffee chat with you and they ask you all the questions, okay? And you give them everything. You give them the steps, you give them the know-how, you give them everything. But let's say you get into a meeting with that person again 5 months later, and you said, hey, did you do anything with what I said? And they said, no, I decided to go on a different path. Okay. Let me say this again. Informing too much versus helping people make a decision to act on the information. On that day off or the week after, they still didn't decide to act on your information. Now, your information is probably out there on Google already. Your information is probably nothing new. When people change their lives, they decided to act on the idea and they decided to act on the information. So the biggest mistake that people are making when they're speaking on the phone or meeting or whatever is they're trying to give too much information versus helping people decide to say, I need to act on this information. So you want to think of talking to a friend or significant other. If you really want to help people or help that person decide on something that's beneficial for them, how would you do it, right? You can even give them all the information. This happened to our friends before. We give them all the information and they said, no, I don't believe anything that you're saying. I don't care how good this is. I don't care how. They said, no, right? No. Because it's not the information that they need. They just needed us to help them make a decision or get closer to the decision they want to make already. Okay. So as a presenter, the job of let's say the job of a basketball player, okay? The main role is to get the ball in the basket. That's it, right? Basketball player, get the ball in the basket.
Yes.
Well, what's the main job of a presenter? It's to help people make a decision. That's it.
To what extent is how you use your voice a part of getting that information across to your audience?
When it comes to using your voice, think about it this way. You know how voice actors and voice actresses, that's when they read a book, they're in the element because they can create at that spot. Or even when you're practicing for a presentation, you can practice it by changing your voice. But when we're live, okay, do you know how many things there are to think about when we're live? Yeah, we can think about our voice. You can think about your eye contact. You can think about if you're cold or not. Because there are so many things to think about when we're live, usually people don't even know what to think about. And they forget they want to focus on the voice or eye contact or whatever they want to focus on in the first place. So the best place to work on your voice is when you practice like a Broadway actor. Okay, when you're a Broadway actor, you're rehearsing how the character sounds like, feels like, but when they're on stage and they're live, they live the moment. They're not thinking of exactly what to do with the voice because they just want to live the moment because they practice so much from the events before.
How important is movement in relation to how you're using your voice? How important is just how you move your body?
They say that people found this out that TED Talks that went viral, I think like 90% of them, they have 2 times more body language than the ones that did not went viral. So your body language has a big key to people remembering your message and making you more engaging and memorable. If this is online, your camera is the new eye contact. Of course, people are not seeing the bottom half of your body, but it's still super important. Your body language, your presence will become very memorable. But what you want to do is be comfortable, and you don't want to force your body language. Of course, when you start practicing, or when you can add in, like playing a piano, you can try to practice chords that you want to use and practice it over and over again. But you want to practice these body language until it gets natural, or if you like it or not. But body language plays a huge part. Of course, with the voice, with body language, your manner, it's really important. Well, one thing I want to bring up, Susan, is what if we forget what we're saying?
If you forget what you're saying mid-sentence and all eyes are on you, that you know what your topic is and you can reiterate perhaps something that you just said and then allow that to draw you right back into where you were. Or you can ask a question. You can pause and say, think about that for a moment. I don't know.
That's good. Think about that for a moment. That's a good one. I'm gonna start using that one, dude.
What do
Oh,
you
think about that.
suggest people do? What do you tell your clients, especially if they're preparing and they're nervous that something like that may occur?
This is, know that people are not out there to throw pies at them. If they forget, step back a little bit or just continue, because no one knows where you're going anyway. They don't know what your next point is. They don't know what the next thing that you're saying is. But this is also a craft that we have to get better at. It's the transitions, is knowing how to come back after you mess up. It's the craft of a great speaker.
Do you suggest that people use that tip of speaking to a mirror?
So when it comes to rehearsals, one is if you want to memorize it. So focus on the words alone. The next time, focus on your body language and the voice. Okay. So for example, if it's good morning, how's everyone doing? You can memorize the words. And then the next time, play with the words, right? So good morning, how's everyone doing? So you can play with the pauses. Now when you're playing with the pauses, you can play with the body language, right? Good morning, as you're putting out your hand. How's everyone doing? And then do some other hand gesture. You want to repeat that because when you're rehearsing, you get better and better at it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with practicing in front of a mirror. That's what comedians do. And they're great at their craft. They practice. Again, comedians are different because the great ones, they practice every little facial expression. They're in the mirror and they're practicing like, oh, when I say this, my face should look like this. They put a lot into, not saying that you can't too, memorize it and then add the manner, your body language and the voice into it.
I'll tell you what I do. Rather than the mirror thing, I started out years ago with the mirror, and then I started whatever room or space I was in, I would utilize everything in that space. So let's say, I'll just take a kitchen, for example. The knobs or the handles on bottom lower cabinets, those would be the people at the front of the audience. And the top of my cabinets would be the people way up in the rafters. And I would look around, so a window would be people off to the side, and I would make eye contact with a knob. And I would stop and pause on that knob and land a point. And then I would move around. And I found, Kit, that once I was on stage, that my body language on stage mimicked those same movements. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's great, Susan. Like using the house object, I think that's going to help a lot of people.
This has just been great. Kit, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been great information, and I'm looking forward to having my audience just up their game when it comes to public speaking. Thank you so much.
Susan, thank you so much.
Soft Power Society, what's your biggest people skills challenge? Do you hesitate when it's your turn to speak up in meetings or to step onto stage, or do you let the outspoken and sometimes loud extroverts overshadow you? I'm inviting you to receive your copy of Social Skills Secrets. It's specifically for people like you who are finally ready to step in from the sidelines and get into the game. Just go to businessclass.expert/social. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye for now.